Welcome here to the Do Brand You channel. It's great to have you here with us. And today I have a great conversation that we're going to have with Cheryl Strachan, and she's living in Canada. So I'm in New Zealand, she's in Canada. She's experiencing a bit of winter, I'm experiencing a bit of summer. But we're going to have a great conversation. So welcome, Cheryl.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me, Lorraine.
Yeah. So just a little bit about Cheryl. She's a registered dietitian in Calgary, Canada, as I said, and her specialty is eating well with heart concerns. She hosts the Sweet Spot Kitchen community for people living with heart disease and writes the Sweet Spot Nutrition blog. And she has recently been diagnosed with a type of cancer, and we're going to get into that as well, because here in the Do Brand You channel, we always are looking at how we can live the best version of ourselves. And it's not only with ourselves, but who we serve, who we are offering our value to, and then how we do that in the different seasons of our life. So let's dive into that, Cheryl. How did you get into wanting to kind of help people with living with heart conditions and eating well?
So, I really just, I became a dietitian in the year 2005. So started my journey towards being a dietitian over 20 years ago. And I had this core belief that food that was healthy could taste good, which I think a lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't. My husband told me once, he said, I always thought there was sort of two kinds of food, the kind that was healthy and the kind that you really wanted to eat that tasted good, right? And then he said, when I met you, I started to realize there's a bit of an overlap. There are some foods that taste good, that are good for you, and that we call the sweet spot. And I really believe everybody has a sweet spot. It's different, right? Everybody has different food that they enjoy and different health priorities. But my role is to help you find your sweet spot and expand it. So that's kind of my reason for becoming a dietitian. And
that's so cool. And I love that, the sweet spot. That's such a cool thing. And you say you have a blog, and I'm always interested in how we communicate our messages and what we have. So when did your blog start, and how did you find doing your blog? And
Well, I worked for the first 10 years or so of my career at a cardiac rehab program, rehabilitation. Okay. So for people who'd had heart attacks or other heart problems. And then in 2014, I went into private practice, and probably about a year or so later started writing my blog. And it's just little articles. Sometimes it's been once a week, but lately it's been a little bit less often than that. And I tried to fill the void. I find a lot of the big organizations like the Heart and Stroke Foundation write very general articles. So I tried to fill the void and make it as practical as I could for people. So, for example, articles about, food at Costco that's not as healthy as it might look, or what to order when you're at Starbucks. So sort of more the things you wouldn't hear from the big non-governmental organizations.
Oh, that is so cool. I love that. Yeah. And so did you gather quite a readership, or how did you grow your blog?
I've just grown it slowly through social media primarily. Okay. So it's at about 1,500 on the email list. So it's not huge, but it's big enough for me.
No, it is.
I'm happy with that. And it's a nice community. I often find when I send out messages, I get lots of nice messages back. So it makes me happy to have that readership.
Yeah, it is so cool. And I think it is so inspiring for people, here with the channel. I do work with people on how they can communicate, and blogging is one of them. And, when you do just reach out with the value that you have, it does connect. And it is hard to find those people, but when you do, and like you say, when you grow slowly, that's one of the things. So we've met on this Circle platform where people build communities. So do you have a community there as well, or are you okay? So what's
do. I started my community, the Sweet Spot Kitchen, about a year ago, or early 2022. So I guess now it's a little more than a year ago. And the idea was, I had done my private practice one-on-one appointments, which only take people so far. I think they're really important. But when you're trying to change lifelong eating behaviors, I think you need something more. So having a community of folks who are going through the same thing and just that ongoing support as opposed to just a point in time was the idea with the community. So I started it in early 2022. And when I pushed the pause button, which I did once I had my cancer diagnosis, I thought I'm not going to be able to do both of these things. So I pushed the pause button. I think I had about 50 members. So it was a nice size, not huge again, but nice enough that we had interaction and, community feeling.
Yeah, no, I think I'm a big believer in growing community from a small. I always think if you start with the dinner conversation and you grow and you focus on the conversations and the connections and the engagement, that community is a long-term game, and even taking a pause is perfectly fine. It's not like we always have to keep going. Like you say, you can start a blog and take a pause. You can start a community and take a pause. My YouTube channel has gone through many iterations, and that's one of the things I think when we, as personal brands, when we try to share what we have, we don't need to put ourselves under that pressure. Hey, no. Not at all.
Well, people were paying me both for my one-on-one appointments and for the monthly payments for the community. And so I always feel obligated to make sure they're getting good value. And I was feeling really sick at the start of my cancer treatments, lots of illness. So I just thought, I can't give these people good value for their money.
Right.
It's just not fair to them. So,
yeah. Okay. No, these are good decisions. So I do want to get into, being diagnosed with cancer and that, because, as personal brands, I've just been reading this book in my community. We have a book club. So in the December, January, we have a stretch month. So it's Living Your Life in Crescendo. Okay. It's Stephen Covey.
Wow.
And it's all about living your life with the attitude of your best is yet to come. And he goes through he does mention 4 different periods of life, in career. The next one is, everything's kind of going well. Those setbacks in life that happen. And also, just moving into kind of, more of our later years in life. And so I thought this is a wonderful opportunity. I'm so grateful that you're willing to be open about it. But how does it happen that you have a life, you're going along, and then all of a sudden you get this diagnosis for cancer? How do you even navigate trying to carry on with what you love to do and doing the best version of you?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. I was diagnosed in February of this year, and it was after almost a year of back pain and other sort of unexplained pains. And I remember even my mother saying, "You should make sure it's not cancer." And I was laughing at her and like, "It's not cancer, Mom. It's like something with my back." And the physiotherapist worked on me, and I had seen my doctor, of course, and I'd seen a chiropractor, although I decided not to go down that route. And finally, I saw a doctor called a physiatrist, which is a specialty where they look at physical medicine and rehabilitation. And he was the first one to really say, "I cannot figure out what's going on with you. Like, you're a mystery. We're going to send you for a whole bunch of tests." And this test called a bone scan came back and said, there are metastases in the bone, which is cancer. And, my doctor was telling me this, and I was like, okay, no, like, I just thought, she must be wrong or something. Like, no, I have back pain. Like, I should be seeing the physiotherapist. But finally she sort of got it through my thick skull. And, for the next 6 weeks or so, I had to go through a number of tests, to try to figure out what kind of cancer it was, that had made its way into my bones. And so there wasn't really a lot of time for decision making. It was sort of just following directions. You're going to have a colonoscopy. It's Friday morning. Be there. Here's how you prepare. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, great.
Gosh.
But like I say, I started to get like a lot of throwing up and sickness when they started radiation and then chemotherapy. So I decided, okay, I'm going to have to put my business on hold because I'm just too sick to do a good job here with people. And not knowing what was coming, pieces started to fall into place in about April, and I finally had a hematologist, which is the doctor that helps with multiple myeloma, and we figured out that's what it was. And he said, you're going to do 4 months of chemo and then a stem cell transplant. And then once they had a closer look at my multiple myeloma, they said, we're going to need actually 2 stem cell transplants because you have more of an aggressive type. So I knew, I was like, I'm going to be off for a while, and I don't know what all this entails. So I'm going to stop working. But since having my stem cell transplant, and even before it, I actually have had sort of a break and I've felt better. So I'm really back to getting on my email once a day and making sure I'm communicating with people. And I've sent out some blog posts, just more on a once a month basis. And I'm starting to do some planning for what's the blog going to look like next year. And I'm trying every morning to do just 15 minutes of professional reading, you know, where I'm looking at the journal articles and what's the news about heart health, just to get myself at the top of my game when I come back to work.
Oh, that's so good. So do you have are you looking at 2024 with the possibility of gaining better and better health then? And
I would hope so. Yeah. Certainly. Yeah. They say it takes 3 to 6 months to recover from this stem cell transplant. So the second one is supposed to be in January. And I'm sort of hoping, okay, well, let's get the business back rolling around March or April or so. But health is certainly the first priority. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
I had a guest that is on the, people can go and look for it. It's an artist named Faye, and it was a great conversation with her too. But yeah, I can't remember what she has, but something where it's quite debilitating in that she only has a certain bucket of energy every day. And then when it runs out, it runs out. And then she can't do anymore. But, it was so inspiring to hear, her, and I can feel it with you, that you still want to keep doing what you're doing. You want to get back to it. And I'm just curious, like with her and like with you, how do you find any good ways of dealing with that? I want to do this much, but I can't. I mean, sometimes that's really hard for people to accept.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And I don't have any magic solutions. You just do the best you can every day. There's only so many hours of energy in the day, for sure, for me as well. I have about 12 hours where I need to rest and sleep, which is, leaves a much more limited time for work. But you just, like always, you just prioritize and do what the most important thing is. And the next day you chip off a little bit more and, hopefully, at the end, you've got what you need to get done.
Yeah. So no, that's so cool. I love that. So like, what are you looking at, like going forward in 2024? What are you hoping to do with your business and how you're reaching out to people with this sweet spot and that?
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly hoping to get the community going again. Yeah. And like I say, the members have been so great this year. Whenever I do send an email, I get lots of love back. And I just really enjoy that aspect of the community. So I'm hoping we can get, some of the people, I think some of the people, their priorities will have changed. But if we can get some of the people back, and I know my email list has been growing. So hopefully some of the newer people are interested in joining us. I just want to make sure we have enough people that it feels like there's a conversation going. Right? You need a certain critical mass with your community before you can get a conversation going. And I've been thinking about the approach, and I think it'll be probably the same as what it was. I used to do a once a month webinar over Zoom just to bring everybody together and to teach them something. And that helps keep people on track, I think. And then we would have a once a month office hours with some Q&A. And again, that just brings people together. And I tried to always defer the conversation to them so they could have a conversation with each other as much as with me, so they can see the value is there in the community as much as, it is with me.
And then that's so cool. I'm curious as well. I know there's a lot of people here on the channel, people that are, it's not just about you as a personal brand for in that concept, but the community that you build. Do you have any like kind of advice or suggestions or anything about how you go about, creating a community, and how you set it up and how you start? Because it's like that starting is almost sometimes such a big challenge that's hard to overcome.
Right. Boy, I think I wouldn't have been able to do it without my email list.
Right.
I think that was the first place to start. And I just do the traditional thing, where I have a lead magnet on my website and people can sign up. And then if they want, they can sign up for the mailing list. And so slowly but surely the email list is growing. And that was one of the things I really wanted to put into place this year. As I'm off work, I thought we've still got to be growing the email list so that when I come back to work, I've got a good core number of people who might need the service that I offer. So having that group of people on the email list. And then I also have a Facebook group. And so I think the Circle community, as well as the Facebook group, it's just a matter of inviting people. And, I invite people periodically and people join. And, as long as you start out with enough people on that email list, I think you're going to be okay.
I think a lot of people think that email today is, it's people aren't checking your emails. It's not as thing, but it really is helpful, isn't it?
I think it's the best way. You're directly into their inbox and, social media, you just never know if you're going to get through to them. Right.
And you don't know which platform they're on or anything like that.
Hey. I know I've been experimenting with different platforms because I used to really like Twitter. I had a great little community of heart health related people on Twitter. And still sort of do, but it's, Twitter is deteriorating, as you know. And so looking at other platforms, it's really hard to know where to go if you're not on Twitter. Instagram is great, but it's not for everybody. And same with Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so those of you listening as well, I will leave the link so that you can grab and get on Cheryl's email list if you're interested in any of what she's talking about here. So that's really cool. So got a few questions for you here. One of the things that people, especially when they go from working for someone else and then you say you started your own business, how did you create that process of, moving into starting your own business? Was it difficult, or did you kind of, were you able to set up processes, or how did that work?
Boy, it's, I can't say it was that difficult. I started out just giving talks at lunchtime at workplaces. We don't do a lot of that anymore in the post-COVID era. No. But prior to COVID, we do the lunch and learn type things. And so that was easy. There's not a lot of setup involved. And then working with people one-on-one, it's more of a medical, type model. So then, of course, you have to get a charting system going. That was probably the biggest hurdle to overcome. But my business is an individual proprietorship. It's not a corporation or anything. So pretty simple to do the setup for it. And of course, I had to find an office space, but that wasn't too hard at the time. The economy was sort of crashing here with the oil and gas industry in Calgary. So lots of free office space. So I don't know. It wasn't too hard.
Yeah. And I think another interesting thing. So you worked at an office, or did you work from home?
So I worked at an office prior to COVID.
But then
as soon as COVID hit, my clientele are people with heart concerns, and that's some of the people who were at highest risk with COVID. So I immediately canceled my lease and started working from home and started working over a channel kind of like Zoom. It's more secure, and it's meant for medical use.
Okay.
And I just find that people really like that. So I'm still doing that, even though, we could have an office space and we could meet in person. But I think people like not having to drive and park and spend so much time coming to your office. And they're more comfortable with a setup like this, right? Where they can just talk to you on the video screen.
Yeah. So what does your typical day look like when you're working from home for you? I know some people find it really challenging, but do you set, boundaries, or how does that work?
Yeah, I do set, typically I just work when my kids are at school. I have 2 girls, they're teenagers. And so when they go to school is when I jump into work. And then when they get home is when I say, okay, household projects and fun commence, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, of course, I have to make changes to that and do a little bit of work while they're home, or, go to a doctor's appointment during the day. But generally, that's how I try to manage my time. And my husband has worked at home since the start of COVID as well. So we have to sort of share the space. But we have lunch together every day at 12 o'clock.
I know. It's these wonderful things about working from home. I do one-on-one coaching with people as well, and have worked with quite a few people who have shifted, into, running their own business and running it from home. And some people find it really challenging to be able to have that time on their own without having the schedule that work provides. But
I think you have to provide your own structure somehow, one way or another. So
yeah, that's really cool. So so what else? Like with what you do, what kind of for the diet thing and that you're doing? I mean, what do you find are some of the things that people can do as far as diet goes? Because I think a lot of people are looking to, eat a little bit better. Is there? Yeah.
Well, the people that I work with are, it's not their first rodeo. Generally, they, come to me having had a heart attack, or maybe they've got high cholesterol and they're trying to figure out how to eat for that. So they've already learned a lot and thought about it. So sometimes what I find myself doing more than anything is helping them liberalize their diet a little bit. People with high blood pressure will think like, I can't have a single ounce of salt. And in fact, they can have a little bit of salt. The problem we have is with really high sodium meals, which typically are things you would get from restaurants, but cooking your own roasted chicken at home with some, vegetables on the side, you want to add a little bit of salt to that. No problem. Right.
Yeah.
So trying to help them liberalize a little bit so that they can enjoy the food more.
Yeah. And I think one of the challenges today is that people are so busy that they don't have time to eat. And do you focus on that as well, and helping people with that?
Yeah. I wrote a cookbook in 2019. It's called the 30-Minute Heart Healthy Cookbook. And every recipe is on the table in 30 minutes or less. It's not just 30 minutes of prep time, but it's ready to go in 30 minutes. And so that was a real challenge for me, coming up with, I think it was 100 and something recipes. Just scouring. But I've kept, probably since 2013, I've kept my recipe collection digital. So it's been really a labor of love, keeping my recipe collection sort of optimized and trying new things and deleting recipes that don't work. So that's, where I sort of mined that collection for the cookbook that I wrote.
And so how can people get in touch? Like, how can people get access to that book? Or?
So the book is on major booksellers here in Canada. It's chapters. Of course, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble in the US. So, and it's, I think about $20. It's fairly affordable. I don't make any money off of it anymore. Actually, the publisher has just a model where I was paid a writing fee. So I have no financial stake in it, but I do still think it's a pretty good little cookbook. It's got some,
that's so cool. And so how did, that's another thing is that I know a lot of people that, they are keen to write a book. I've just finished my second book. I wrote a book with my daughter. We published it last year. And so how did you get, what was that drive that you had to want to do your own book? And obviously, I guess you went with a publisher route. And so how did that work?
Honestly, the publisher approached me.
Okay.
It's a publisher that publishes sort of medical type books like this. And they published lots of them. And they had an idea that they wanted to do a book like this, 30 minutes and quick. They no more than 10 ingredients per recipe. Exactly the kind of thing you said. It's people don't have a lot of time. So they wanted to fill that need for the heart health niche. And they had found my blog and said, we like your writing style. Could you write this book? We've outlined it. So they've even outlined the book and said, here for X amount of dollars, can you write the book? And they wanted it in about 9 weeks.
Wow.
Crazy. Yeah, but that was just the first draft. They wanted in 9 weeks, and they have a whole sort of assembly line type process with one editor after another and the food photography. And it was actually really neat to see how they publish a book like that.
That is so cool. That is really cool. I haven't heard of it like that, but that's amazing. That kind of whole foresight of what they want, and then they just go find the expert.
Yeah, they kind of mine Amazon and Google and try to figure out what are the needs that people have. What are people interested in right now? And then they publish the book super fast before those needs change.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's so cool.
Although I think heart disease is not going away.
No, I don't
this
think
is not one that's a flash in the pan.
Unfortunately, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, gosh, this has been such a great conversation. I just really appreciate that. I did want to also ask, in the realm of community, you've talked about, your email list, the community that you've built, the people that you serve. Where do you find support, especially from like working at home? Do you have a support group of any way, online or offline?
I really just, I do rely on the Circle community that I really find that's a great little support group for people who are doing this kind of work. But personally, I just really appreciate my friends and family who've been so supportive, especially through this whole year of having cancer. And I can't travel, at least I can't travel outside this close area where I live right now. They want me to kind of be close to the hospital. So people have come to me, and it's just been wonderful, to really. And as you look at, your mortality a little bit more closely with that cancer diagnosis, you realize like, this is what's important, right? Is the friends and family and the people in my life.
That's such a good thought to even begin to finish this off on. And I did want to know, and I had asked you, you say you have a quote that you live by. I'm always interested in what that is. So what is your quote?
There are so many good ones, but I do like this one, especially this year, from the movie The Martian. I don't know if you've seen that with Matt Damon. He plays an astronaut who gets stuck on Mars and has to figure out how to survive and get home. He says at some point, everything's going to go south on you, and you're going to say, this is it. This is how I end. Either you accept that or you get to work. And that's all it is. You just begin, you do the math, you solve one problem, you solve the next one, and you solve the next. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home. And I know it's from a movie, but I just think that's such a good reminder for me when it seems like, oh gosh, it's just one problem after another, and especially with the cancer diagnosis, you're just going to appointment after appointment, and they're like, you're going to do a PET scan now, and you're going to do this and that. It's like, okay, just solve one problem after another, and we'll get to where we need to go.
I love that. That is so inspiring. And I love the fact that you picked a movie, because I often, the first book I wrote, I had quotes in it. And, one of them was from the Lego movie, it's something about, you are the special, and another one came from the Hunger Games. And I think we can find so much inspiration in art and film and movies and things.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. This has been wonderful conversation. I know those listening will have enjoyed it. They will have gotten a lot out of it. And definitely those of you listening, check out the show notes, connect with Cheryl, check out that sweet spot. And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.